October 28th, 2022. Let's talk about the telephone network in Bachelors Grove a little bit. Not too much though. But my recent little visit to Bachelor Grove Prairie, when I was walking along the road, there was remnants of the old telephone network before the area was gobbled up by the forest preserves for us all to enjoy. There's another location a little south of that across the street at some place called Camp Falcon. And at Camp Falcon, you actually can see remnants of the telephone poles and some of the original insulators, the glass ones, and then more modern stuff, and then much more modern stuff actually before it got torn down. So there's like stages to the old telephone network. And of course, these days we have the good old cell phone towers here at Bachelor Grove Cemetery, and that's the modern wireless communication kind of stuff. And I don't know, it's kind of fun. But did you know that during the development of the let's pause here. During the development of the telephone days, there was a wireless telephone actually. Before cell phones, before those good old radio transmissions, they were using light waves, sunlight, to transfer the voice. It was called a photophone. And there's actually some plaques and some history behind this if you look online. But look up the photophone on Wikipedia. There's a lot of cool stuff you can read on that. But the idea, like that sunlight coming down at me, they would take that and reflect it off of a vibrating object. So let's say in this case, just like kind of like a horn, and you'd speak into the horn and it would vibrate something reflective. And as that sunlight came down and bounced off that vibrating, whatever they would use at the time during their experiments, it would modulate the light. And then on the other side, you'd use another sort of material. Back then, it could be a bunch of various stuff, but it would demodulate that light, and you would hear voice. And I guess the first successful one was 700-foot distance. But then as time went on, I started learning even about how the military, ships at sea, they would use light and stuff like that to secure their communication from the enemy. And I know there's a lot of fascinating stuff about the telephone. But the photophone actually is kind of playing a role in what I've been doing today with investigating part of the paranormal. So demodulating light. Doesn't mean that all light that vibrates you can hear. Sometimes it's such low in frequency you just can't hear it, but you can use computers to detect it. I mean, even stuff like a remote control from your house, your TV. Shine it on a sensor and that's the sound of your remote control. Also, for instance, the light that's shining down on some of the leaves, when you got high wind days, as those leaves vibrate, we hear it as a shaky leaf thing. Sometimes, you'll hear it as that kind of a sound if you demodulate some of that light. A lot of it's also low frequency stuff that you can't hear, but that's light vibrating. So what if you have something in the environment that's giving off its own light? It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a voice, but you can pick up those effects of those vibrations in your environment. That's the basic principle of this optical receiver that I built. For what it's worth, I told you that some of these anomalous lights are oscillating. I felt one on my shoulder oscillating, that kind of thing. In theory, just like the sun hitting the leaves, you should be able to pick up some sort of an effect. So, people that are using electromagnetic meters, I would say toss that stuff out, like the K2 meter, for example. There's a lot of problems with that. Let's say you go to, here at Bachelor Grove Cemetery, the cell towers totally set those things off all the time. Sometimes very strong in certain spots, other times it gets a little flaky and you think you're getting something. There's no practical real purpose in it. But with the optical stuff, there's so much to discover, and it doesn't even have to be paranormal. It could just be basic science. But if your camera could pick up on things that you can see or not see, things like a photodiode, especially good photodiodes, they should be able to pick up on that, such as this just simple remote. You're in front of your television and you're trying, let's see if you can see the light on these cameras. You can't. See a little purple thing going on? off, on, off. You know, they're usually short range, very weak signal coming out of these remotes. You know, the batteries are getting low. You're like, man, I'm trying to change the channel. But if you take the right photodiode and come out to, you know, open atmosphere, full sunlight, this sucker can detect a few 100 feet away of just this remote, and that's a pretty weak signal. So if we have anomalous events going on, whether we see them or not, in theory you should be able to detect some sort of signal, whether that's going to be something that's consistent in the environment or not. You're still able to detect something. Now, what happens when that signal is not natural? Some of these anomalous lights, if it's not natural and they are oscillating, whether it's low frequency oscillation or high frequency, you know, it could be in the megahertz range, could be down in the audible range of oscillation, we should be able to still detect something. Yeah. Maybe you're not into electronics, maybe you've never designed your own stuff, but making one of these receivers is actually fairly easy. I'll try to produce some schematics to give you a basic idea, but there's things called the TIA, trans-impedance amplifier. There's the plane. I don't want to give you too much jargon here, but there are schematics out there, electrical schematics on trans-impedance amplifiers, converting diode signals to something electrical so that you can analyze it, whether it's sound or something else. But technically these things are much cheaper to build than, let's say, if you're building or are going out and buying a K2 meter. That's really getting you nowhere, actually. Even if you think it is, it's not. It's just giving you probably a lot of false positives, let's put it that way. And you're not really walking away with anything to analyze. In this case, these lights, whether they're mysterious lights, you know, roaming around the cemetery, you know, Bachelors Grove, or maybe you're into ufology. You know, you ever wonder, like, you got these night vision scopes and all this kind of stuff going out there and you're able to see these lights, but if these things in the sky are putting off plasma or whatever it is, there's an oscillatory effect, these photodiodes should in theory be able to detect something depending upon your configuration. There's a lot of open area to experiment with here. There's different ways you can use these photodiodes, and I'll probably come back with another video to, you know, play around some aspects to it. But you know, if you're not into electronics, this would be a great time for you to start. You can learn. It sometimes only takes like 5 different components and some batteries to get these things rolling on a basic level. Yeah. So if you were recently at the cemetery here, I was out with things like this weird device. It's just a little LED floodlight, actually a very low power one, old-fashioned one. I just built it into a case. But even this weak signal stuff, you can hear it in full sunlight. I'll just sweep an audio signal, I'll modulate, put sound on the light, and just walk around different distances. We can pick it up. They're very sensitive. Even this remote control is easily detectable up to hundreds of feet. It varies in strength. You know, doing this close by, like that, you hear it loud. There you go. But if I go a couple hundred feet away, yeah, you can hear it. But it's there. It's faint. It's there. But you're still able to, you know, with something like this, you could see the pulses, and who knows what these modulating lights could be producing. What kind of pulses are going on, if anything, right? So anyway, I don't make this thing super long. Here's a shot of me just kind of like walking around the cemetery, just kind of like preliminary testing the range for the daylight stuff, because daylight sensing is kind of hard. You got to decrease your sensitivity to a point, but even in this daylight mode, being able to hear this tone shifting back and forth through the light, yeah, you can hear it. That gives us some confidence that we can do these things. You don't have to come out at night to see everything spooky. You don't have to go breaking the law and getting a ticket to do these kinds of things. I mean, you could just go about your day and just run these things. I've got them where it's like streaming to my phone. I could put some earbuds in, and if you happen to start hearing things funky, yeah, you can take a look at what it is, then get the camera rolling, or have the camera rolling ahead of time. I don't know. I'm babbling again, but I'll just end this with kind of even a tribute to somebody. There's a group out there called the End of Anarchy, and they produced a Bachelors Grove song. So what I did was I actually just broadcasted their song using light waves across portions of the cemetery. Technically, this is a very weak signal, but it should give you an idea of just how much you can recover even in a weak signal. The fidelity obviously isn't super great, but it's not too bad. So enjoy the rest of this, just having fun. This is just kind of a hobby, but it definitely has a lot of potential in this and other kinds of fields of research.
They bury me.